Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson was Chief of Staff for former US Secretary of State Colin Powell. For 16 years, he was a distinguished visiting professor of government and public policy at the College of William and Mary, and he joins us now live from just outside of Washington, D.C. Colonel, it did seem at the beginning that Donald Trump expected a quick win here. Coming off the high of what happened in Venezuela, well, it's certainly not got that. Is the US and Israeli strategy in danger of unravelling?
I think very much so. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper that I read, the only one that Bibi doesn't own, had a headline the other day that was very, very accurate. It said, Iran needs to not lose to win. Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu need a spectacular victory to win. They will not achieve that spectacular victory. And in fact, now Hezbollah is showing a resilience and a resoluteness that Bibi underestimated also. So he's got at least a two-front war, and arguably an even bigger war than that, because he's got an appetite for other places like Syria, as well as Lebanon, Gaza, and the West Bank.
But what about the strategy employed during this conflict? Okay, but has that strategy been conflated with its objective, which is, well, ephemeral at best? I mean, we've had 9 reasons from Donald Trump for starting this war.
Tell me what the objective is, and if you give me a good one, I might assume it is the objective, because I have heard nothing from my military, nothing from the State Department, and certainly nothing from the White House that even resembles a coherent objective, let alone a achievable objective. What I've heard is everything from this will be a short war, this will be a long war, this will be a ground force war, this will be an air war, this will be a missile war. I don't think they know what they're doing, frankly, and that is very disturbing for a man like me who's spent 31 years in the American military and most of the time knew what we were doing. I don't see anyone in this group that looks like they know what they're doing, certainly not the Secretary of Defense, War, Hegseth, and certainly not the President. And I might as well throw the National Security Advisor / Secretary of State in there, Marco Rubio, too. They don't seem to know what they're doing, and they're not using the statutory decision-making process. As Tulsi Gabbard indicated vividly to Congress, even though she also indicated a total ignorance of that process.
Colonel, we don't actually even know what's actually happening within Israel, whether the ballistic missiles that Iran has fired, and they're getting better in terms of the quality of them as ordnance is depleted in Iron Dome and other defense systems.
Well, they're putting Karam Shahs in there now, Mach 3, Mach 4 missiles, many of which have, I don't call them cluster warheads, I call them MIRV warheads, like our nuclear missiles. That is to say, they're much better than cluster bombs or cluster warheads. And I've seen video, I've seen live video smuggled out, to be sure, because Israel has cracked down on it majorly. And I have seen the damage done to Haifa and the oil facilities there and the port there. I've seen the damage done to Ben Gurion. I've seen the damage done internally to Tel Aviv. I've seen people die on the street running between bomb shelters. So the devastation being wreaked on Israel, despite their blockade of any information getting out, is leaking out.
How do you think that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is viewing all this now?
I think he's probably getting somewhat desperate. And I recall to my mind, sadly enough, gravely enough, what he said in Hebrew to his entourage of like-minded people about 4 or 5 days ago in a bunker, which was, they will get a big surprise if this keeps up. Words to that effect in Hebrew. They essentially were translated for me as they cannot imagine what I'm going to do to them. Well, there's only one way as a military professional I interpret that. I interpret that as he's going to use a nuclear weapon.
Well, that would be one thing which they had countenanced before in the 1973 war with Golda Meir.
Yes, yes. Here, I'm very concerned as a military professional who knows something about nuclear warfare. I studied it for 18 years. I was a prefix 5 officer, for example, which means I knew about nuclear weapons. If you really wanted to damage Iran in a significant way that might bring them to the table to surrender, you wouldn't use one. You'd have to use multiple weapons, because Iran is a country as big as Western Europe. It has some incredibly daunting terrain in the Zagros Mountains and the Dasht al-Kavir Desert. It is a huge country, and these small nuclear weapons, and they are small, are not going to do that much damage unless you mass them, and you mass them on key underground targets. So I don't think this is going to be a single use of a nuclear weapon. If he does do it, it's going to be multiple weapons.
But he'd also break the nuclear taboo, but not nearly. Of course, that would be the worst kind of outcome here. But a second worst outcome possibly would be the US and Israel putting boots on the ground.
That's not a very good prospect either, as you just said. I've seen the so-called plan for using the Marine Expeditionary Units that are now making their way toward Karg Island, a long way away right now. One carrier and group are in the Red Sea, and I think the others up in the Mediterranean still. So if they do it, they're going to have to do it with Ospreys. They're going to have to do it with aircraft, in other words, and they're going to have to stage out of Kuwait or some other similar place close by, because the range of an Osprey is only about 400 miles. So if they're going to do this, it's going to be extremely dangerous. It's not going to be Venezuela, and I fear that's what they're thinking about the precision of Venezuela. They can implement that in the Persian Gulf. I've got news for them. I planned for warfare in the Persian Gulf for 4 years at the Pacific Command, when we were the command responsible for it. And it isn't easy territory. None of Iran is easy territory, not even Karg Island, the Forbidden Island, as it's called. It's a very crucial facility. It's essential to Iran's oil program. But I think it's a little bit too far to think that we can take it and not get an enormous casualty count out of that.
Where will this conflict, in your view, with what you've said, leave America, Colonel, and its position in the Middle East?
Gone. That's my professional view. I think the Arab countries in particular, but all the countries, including Egypt, and I don't consider them an Arab country, have learned that the security agreement with the United States is a false one, that they have been attacked and attacked and attacked, and that they might be attacked even further and in a more deadly way. And so they're going to be looking for new big daddies, if you will. And the big daddies are right there waiting for them, Russia and China.
Colonel, thank you so much for your time. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson there, former Chief of Staff,
Sure.
US Secretary of State Colin Powell.